Yeah, Brian Lloyd. My background is really institutional finance, investment banking, worked in private equity, worked for hedge funds in New York, and at one point decided while that was all intellectually incredibly challenging and rewarding, it was intrinsically a little empty for me. And so moved into the financial planning world, where I get to work with real people and solve problems and hopefully be a part of their movement toward happiness and fulfillment. And I'm the CEO and founder of Painted Porch.
Hi, everyone. My name's Devin Frazier. I grew up in the Portland area, and now I live in Bend, Oregon, and I'm an advisor at Painted Porch.
Hey everyone, Justin Valander here, originally from Denver, Colorado, and currently reside in sunny Santa Barbara. I'm an advisor at Painted Porch.
Hi, I'm Craig Schmidt. I'm a client concierge here at Painted Porch. I grew up in the Midwest, Wisconsin, got to go rep the pack. But now I'm living in Santa Barbara, California these days, and sure beats dodging the snow.
My first question and starting point is just kind of around the topic, and the topic being, planning around layoffs for our community or for our clients, and kind of why is that top of mind for us?
I think and I definitely brought this one up recently because the headlines just the last few weeks, we've had major layoffs in tech, which, headlines in AI, et cetera, but it's not the first time I've seen this in my career or been through it and been able to have the privilege of helping people when something like that happens to themselves or to friends or family. And so it was a timely topic to talk about. What we've seen is that there's a lot you can't control in that situation, but financial planning is one of those things that can really help people get grounded, reset, focus on what they really want to do next when they're ready for that. And there's a lot of fear and a lot of stress usually for anyone that goes through that process, certainly young families and people headed toward retirement, things like that. So it just felt like something we should be talking about and should be hopefully putting things out there that are helpful for people that may be going through that.
Yeah, I can dovetail on what Brian just said in a couple ways. I mean, navigating the transition between one position and another can bring on a lot of financial stress. And the thing that we help people with is getting a handle on their finances and helping them feel empowered to make that transition. The idea of, layoffs hits pretty close to home for me because my partner actually is going to start leave and was informed that if she wasn't on leave, she would have been laid off. And I can tell you around the household, there is a lot of financial talk going on because how are we going to do it? Will we be able to make it kind of conversations? They're just hitting us right in the face, right? And I think having the backbone of working with Painted Porch and the things that we do with clients where we help them navigate those financial questions can give them so much more confidence in a time when it can be really hard to feel confident, right? Because you're kind of getting whipsawed around. One day you hear that you got a good chance to find a new job, maybe you don't. And then just knowing that you've got the wherewithal to kind of keep swimming against the tide sometimes is a big part of what I think we're able to help folks with.
Yeah, there's all these swirling anxieties or uncertainties, and there's frankly a lot of time where you're not certain where future outlook is going, things of that nature. And it's really helpful working with a financial planner to give you that scope of what is that current runway looking like, or what are my investment assets, or maybe you have equity compensation that you're unsure of as well. And all those bits and pieces and understanding trade-offs of going back to work immediately, or do you have to even go back to work? What is that runway looking like? So a lot of those will be explored during that planning process if you are working with a financial advisor around that.
I spent 30 years in the Portland area, so layoffs, reorganizations, things like that aren't new. Maybe they're making more headlines now. Maybe Intel's joining the conversation a little bit more, but having spent over a decade at Nike, I personally survived 3 layoffs. And about 6 months after I left, my old team had been impacted as well. So there's just a lot of emotion that goes with that uncertainty for so long. And so what I really enjoyed about financial planning is that you're preparing for all those scenarios. If you're ever in a conversation with me, my personal bias that I bring into every conversation is I always look at your emergency fund, because when I was going through layoff times, every time I paid off a student loan or every time my emergency fund got a little bit bigger, I felt a little calmer. And so I want to bring that kind of relief to everybody that I work with.
You might have to figure out health insurance. You might have your employer telling you need to like move your retirement plan. And these are all just little hassles you have to think about along the way on top of trying to make your next step. And, we can help folks as they're navigating all those hurdles to try to assess, can you afford this health insurance? Is it the right health insurance for you? Make sure that you're in good shape and can feel confident.
Yeah, that brings a really good point, Greg, of um, having that thought partnership of bouncing ideas off of each other, understanding implications of health insurance or other ventures as well. I think that's super important.
So maybe some of you could talk about situations you've seen and why is it exciting for us to do those things to help with, do I take Cobra? Do I find other insurance? Should I draw on investment accounts? Should I draw on retirement accounts? Should I take a home equity loan? Things that are really scary when we first start out and looking at, finances around a layoff, perhaps a burn rate situation where someone's got a certain amount of time. Why is that something we're sitting here talking about that, why would we be interested in helping in a situation like that?
We don't want you to feel like I can't make XYZ move because I won't be able to afford it, or I don't want to take the time that it would take for me to do the thing that I'm actually passionate about because I'm afraid that I wouldn't be able to make it. And I feel like we can open doors for people just by looking at their assets, looking at the opportunities that they have. And that for me is a big part of what I enjoy about the work. I mean, you're helping people realize their full potential by not being limited by that scarcity mindset that we're all victim to sometimes, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like you could be in a career where maybe it was paying really well, and then the unfortunate news of being laid off, and then maybe it invigorates some sort of sense of exploring a career that maybe you've put on the sidelines for a period of time, where maybe it's that opportunity to expand on that, and you have the means and ability to take more time than most people often think they don't. So it's really exploring that visually of mapping it out. What is that burn rate that Brian was alluding to, or how much runway really do you have? And oftentimes it's way more than people even think. And then that provides peace of mind and then really calms that anxiety.
No matter who you are, there's two restraints that everybody has. It's time and it's money. And so when you're going through a layoff, for the first time, probably in a long time, you've got a lot of time on your hands. And so what I really enjoy about working with folks who are going through layoffs is we can actually flip the script a little bit of, instead of this is something that happened to me, oh no, I need to jump back into the job market right away. It's like, hold on, let's calculate your burn rate. How much time do you have? What are your big dreams? You don't have to retire just once, you can retire often. And so, what does it look like to purposely stay out of the job market for 2, 3, 7 years, whatever your burn rate is, and really get after these big, big goals in your life?
Yeah. And you guys all hit on what I was digging for, which is, number one, it's incredibly fulfilling for people in our seats to alleviate suffering. So that's step one is, can we get grounded? Can we frame? Is it bad? How bad is it? We're not here to say it's not bad. We're not here to say you have a lot of time. We're here to actually put numbers to it so that you can decide, what is it really? And a lot of times without that, we tend to inflate the bad stories in our head and maybe even get fixated on them. And the second one is that possibility for transformation that I think we all get really excited about, that all of you hit on. And I wanted to say it that way because not everyone's ready for transformation, certainly not when they're absorbing the news or going through possibly a little bit of shock about the situation. We're just there to be allies and help get grounded and make it feel less overwhelming if we can. But somewhere in there, and I love the burn rate sort of analysis financial plan is so key because, I know we've all had situations where you do that with someone and you show they have a little more space. Maybe they thought, hey, I can take 6 months, but I better get a job after 6 months. And you look at it, it's like, well, maybe 4 years. And then you're kind of in trouble. And not that you're going to wait 4 years. Like, I'm not saying that. That's up to you. But then once that gets processed, the person starts to have vision on their own. well, what could I do if I really had 4 years? Maybe I don't believe 4 years. Maybe I think it's just 2 years, but 2 years is a lot different than 6 months. And when that starts to happen, it's incredibly rewarding for financial planners that care about this stuff, which I know you all do, we all do. So that's what I was really looking for. Is I think a lot of people out there may think, gosh, they're a financial firm and I'm going to be drawing money. Why would they want to talk to me? Right. And it's like the exact opposite. It's such an impact period for us to show up and be a partner, and whether someone becomes a client or not, just be there for them and be part of that journey and see someone come out the other side of it, which I know all of us have case studies and stories of people we work with, and they're among my favorite stories in my life, to be there for someone and help relaunch and sometimes completely change mindset and sometimes completely change direction, and sometimes over multiple years. So it's a pretty incredible opportunity and a privilege to help people in that situation.
I've had a chance to catch a glimpse of it in my almost 6 years working with Painted Porch, and it is so fascinating to see how someone's on the cusp of trying something that feels a little dangerous. Maybe I try to do the thing I'm passionate about. We'll have a meeting and it's like an inkling of an idea, and we're like, give it a shot. You've got space to try it out, right? And then we check in a couple months, and now here we are. Like it's just that having that someone in your corner who believes in you and continues to give you that financial backing and confidence that you need to unlock your potential.
Yeah, and even if from a practical perspective, someone takes space, gets clear about what they want to do, and they want to go back to do what they were doing, sitting in interviews with extra confidence that you don't need that job right then, right there, is such an advantage in interviewing. And having done the work to be clear about why you want it, that you actually want it, that you're not just, hey, I'm trying to get back to where I was. We hire people, we work with business owners, we know like that's who you want to hire, is someone that clearly knows what they want and why they want it and how they're going to impact your firm. And we've worked with so many people through both layoffs and sabbaticals where there's all that fear going in, and then they come back and they're clear. And some of them even went right back in. I know we have a client at Microsoft that took a year off, traveled, came back, decided to come back, went to a group that they enjoyed working with, and were so much happier on the other side because they had that time and space to be intentional about why they wanted what they wanted. And I think also more impactful with the group they work with. So it doesn't have to be a massive transformation. The clarity itself can be transformation. So really fun.
And the irony is, it makes you more exciting in an interview. I've been in the interviewer seat and I've had people say, hey, I took this time and I did a backpacking trip. And I'm like, that's really cool. I know you can do the technical stuff, but this is actually kind of somebody I want to work with. This seems really cool. We could bounce ideas off of each other's. It's my favorite part of this job is, yes, we are technical. We're nerds. We'll help you through Cobra and all the things in the transition. And then we're also going to nudge you to buy the sewing machine because you want to make your own clothes for raves, or it's time for you to write that book that you know is coming and that's needs to pour out of you at the time. And by being intentional, like Brian said, just I love that word of being intentional. You walk back into the interview room and you go, I took time off. Yes. And here's exactly what I accomplished.
Yeah, taking the time and space like puts your best foot forward too. So you're presenting your best self during that interview process and really giving pause and reflecting, you know, thus far in your working career. It's like, hey, you've accomplished so much. And then what else do you want to accomplish, or maybe pivot or change direction? So I think it's really important to pause and reflect and take that time if you can afford to do that too.
So getting a little into the technical of like, why would I go to my retirement account? Those kinds of things, I think actually are nice to hear, because I actually wouldn't have thought of that as a strategy, for example.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest part of the way we approach financial planning. We think financial planning should be approached is that the money's there to serve your life. And we have a lot of rules we make up along the way, rules of thumb, heuristics about how we save and how we build wealth, that we can be locked into in a situation like this, and it can make things less clear or even harder. Like if you're under 59, a retirement account is kind of like just off limits, right? I mean, just mentally, you're like, I can't touch that. That's impossible. But the financial planning, this is one example. The financial planning truth is your household income probably dropped. If you're single without kids, it went to zero. So your tax brackets come to almost nothing. And the impact of those withdrawals, while still there'll be a tax consequence to drawing that money out early, and it shouldn't be the first thing you would take, it is there to help launch you. That's what it's for. And a lot of people worry about after, okay, so if I do that, am I irreparably damaging my retirement, which is another thing we get a lot, right? So some of that resistance is technical. Oh, I was told never to touch it. There's taxes. Well, maybe that's not as bad as you're thinking about. The other one is I will forever be, destined to live alone under a bridge if I take that money out of the retirement account. And the truth is, if you take the time to figure out something you could really love to do and you could make enough money to support yourself, the savings will compound. It sounds a little Pollyanna, but it's not. I mean, all you need to do is make a little more than you need for, a good portion of your life. And usually these transitions are an opportunity to reassess what you really want to do and what you really need in your life to live. And what we found is if you're truly happy, you need less relatively than if you're maybe stretching and working for a future that isn't your present. It's not happiness in your presence. Everything is on the table. It doesn't mean that that all needs to be done, because that can sound scary, but it should all be on the table and framed rationally so you can make choices. And pretty much anything you could throw at the team here, I'm sure we've seen where we just frame it as a rational decision. If you touch that, what would happen? Our brains say, well, then I'm blowing everything up. It's terrible. It's like, well, no, there's a defined tax impact, and this is what's on the other side of it. And if it took you, however long it takes you to get back on your feet, this is the impact.
In my household, it's like knowing each other and knowing the history helps a lot too. And we do have the advantage of working with clients for a long time and knowing kind of what they've seen and what they've done. And from us, it's like my partner's like, how much runway do I have? And I'm like, well, have you considered that you could take some of your deductible contributions to your Roth IRAs out? Oh, wow, I just found you 6 months. That's pretty cool, right? Like, and I know her, of course, so I know that about her. Or like, oh, you paid for this medical expense last year out of pocket, and we've been getting you to save into that sick HSA, right? Hey, I just found you a couple more months, like, and that's actually kind of fun. I feel like I'm rummaging for like coins in the couch cushions or something, right? But, and it is financial nerdiness in a way. It's just realizing the avenues that you can take and how to best navigate the puzzle you're in.
I think everyone hit it too. It's understanding those trade-offs, the opportunity costs. If you make a decision to be quote unquote break the glass for those retirement accounts, pay that 10% penalty in the taxes, how far is that going to put you back, or is it going to actually accelerate you going forward based on you maybe being in a job that is earning very well? You've taken the time to think through it, and then that compounding effect from you earning more and saving.
My experience is I had that experience when I left New York and came to California. And for the first time in my life, and this was many years ago, but gave myself permission to think broadly about what do I want to do. I'd always just done what was next job, the next promotion, the next career change that was obvious and represented achievement or advancement, professionally. And then I gave myself permission to think holistically about what brings me joy, what do I want to do, and I can do anything. And man, was it overwhelming. I mean, just completely overwhelming, almost to the point of depression, because I'd never not had that crutch of like, what are you supposed to do? And so I wanted to put that out there and just share it, that we get that it's all this, oh, you've got time, you've got possibility, it can really fall flat if it's not where you're at yet. And there are ways and processes to get your arms around that. We don't get all the way into that. We certainly are aware of it and compassionate about it, and know coaches and resources that can help really frame that up. But it is helpful when your finance team understands that it's not all going to just be okay because you show me a run rate, is last 5 years. There's a whole process to this, and it's much deeper. The other thing, though, that was really helpful for me was in struggling with some, branches in the road along the way, was really good friends of mine that were in a group, kind of like support group, sharing experiences along the way. And I was at a moment of doubt, which I think this situation brings up for a lot of people, and really pulled out of me, what are those doubts? What are you worried about? What's the concern? And they all come up to like, I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm going to end up failing and, all this stuff. We all have imposter syndrome and do that. I'm not immune to that. And this particular friend said, I hear that. If you look at your journey, if you look at how you got to where you are today, is that your track record? Is that what happens? Right? Is it that you don't get back up, that you don't find something else productive to do, that you don't use your talents? Chances are most of the people that are going to watch whatever we turn this into are in some ways shocked and disappointed because they were in a position of success that they were enjoying and that has now been disrupted. And so it's just that moment to step back and go, well, how did that success happen? I think we all have a little story sometimes, I certainly do, that, ooh, was it all just luck? Well, they all figure it out and it was all just luck. And so this friend was the one that said, okay, well, let's look at that for a second. Is that right? Did you get lucky 100 times in a row? Right? Is every time this journey happened and you took this path, was that luck? Certainly there's some luck in it. Opportunity comes to us through luck, but what we make of it is about who we are. And I know a lot of people that can land or it cannot land depending on where you're at. But like, I just found it really helpful to look at and say, well, give yourself credit for who you are. It doesn't mean overestimate it, but give yourself credit for how you show up, how you use your talents, how you treat people, and that generally has worked out. And it's worked out for a reason, not because of just the whims of fate, right? There, you have some role in it, and you'll still have that role.
I've got an odd, kind of quirky riff off of the first thing Brian said. As a lot of people might know, I'm a student of improv. And when you start a scene and you could do anything and you have no idea what you are or where you are or what you're doing or whatever, it's so nice when someone comes in and they're like, hey, we're making pizza, right? Yeah, we're making pizza, Okay, cool. Okay, yeah, now we're making pizza. Like, I know how to do that. I know how to do that. I'm making pizza. And then you can go from there instead of just starting from the blank canvas of, oh no. And fortunately, another thing they say in improv is we have our entire life history and experiences to draw on when we're trying to make that scene from nothing. And just like Brian said, your career history and everything that got you here up until now, it doesn't just go away.
So I think this is very common in the Portland area and these bigger companies that layoffs tend to be less about performance of the individual and more the performance of the company, the project, the department. But there's still a stigma. And I even heard it amongst my friends as I was getting anxious about layoffs coming. And they go, well, only low performers get laid off. And I'm like, oh, that's not how it works. And so it can be really tough when you're one of those because we know you at this point. We've worked with you. We know you're really smart and very capable, and it's not you. So just knowing that we're here for you and we can sit down and we know all those emotions and we know how isolating it can be. Sometimes it's just helpful to talk it out. And we're your safe person to talk to because we can also get into the money side, which is a little taboo to talk about with your friends, and then help you at least know that, okay, you know where you stand financially. And then you can start reaching back out in those connections with one less thing on your mind. It's just the little things that will help shift your perspective.
Yeah, I think Devin makes a great point of being that listening ear, not immediately jumping into the planning, even though that provides an immense value to understanding that, but just being that listening ear and taking a step back of how does that make you feel, or tell me more about that, and really understanding all those conflicting feelings of you're a high performer and it wasn't based on performance or a very unfortunate circumstance, and then talking through all those bits and pieces and understanding all of that context of how that formulates into the future planning work too, because all of those details and context is so helpful that I think oftentimes is overlooked in that planning.
And we're here for every part of the layoff. I had an experience where the CEO announced they were going to lay off in 6 months. So then everybody around you, even if you're not worried about it or you're looking forward to the potential of a severance, everyone else around you might not be. And especially certain leaders will think now's the time to really show them what we got. And you're like, it's too late. That was a year and a half ago. So even if like you're excited about the layoff or you're waiting, it can just be really stressful. And so we can meet with you early and have some proactive steps. We can even talk with you about what your employee benefits are and help you figure out how to best negotiate a severance. Um, I knew colleagues who were getting ready to retire and they actually volunteered. And so that could be something we could help you figure out, is that appropriate for you? How's the best way to get after it? And what would be most meaningful for you and least costly for the company? Because usually those are very different. So we can help you see all sides of it.
And Devin, I think you're the only one in the room that worked for a big corporate entity. Did Nike just, if your experience, did Nike, what did they provide around this for people that were laid off? Is there, I know severances can be relatively generous depending on the company, but was there any planning support? Was there any sort of advisory or coaching support generally for layoffs when they happen?
A little bit. They had just started for regular employees adding a benefit of financial coaching. So that could have been something that you could have negotiated for, of like, I'm going to have that for the whole year after I get laid off. But I do know that they would extend healthcare benefits. They also had resources for finding a job and like revitalizing your resume and things like that.
Yeah, I've seen a few of those, but I didn't know. And there's a few companies out there that have, provide a benefit like what Painted Porch provides as a ongoing benefit for employees, but it's not as common as I would have thought. There are firms that specialize in that. We definitely do that for a few companies, but it just doesn't seem as prevalent for some of these. I don't believe Meta or Oracle or Atlassian, which are the big tech ones that have been announced in the past few weeks. I don't know that any of those have those type of services. So it is um, it is an opportunity. I love the way you pointed out. It's okay, actually, just 6 months ahead to be like, this is coming. I want to make sure I'm ready. I don't want to. I want to be in a place of leverage if I'm being offered a package or anything like that. I want to know what I want to do. That was really really well said.
And the benefit of us at Painted Porch is chances are we've worked with people from your company as well. So we can kind of give you a preview of what we've seen. No guarantee that it'll be the same for you, but at least we kind of have a list of things you could be thinking about. Justin, I think you have more experience with like executive compensation packages. And so I'd love to hear you just riff.
Yeah, I think it's understanding like negotiating severance packages and understanding if there are like repurchase agreements with stock options, or if you have stock that you currently own and then companies like, hey, we want that bought back, and so you get compensated for that piece. Or understanding like, hey, here is the severance package, and then having an attorney look at it, understanding, are there ways that it's hurting me, or I can negotiate to a higher payout, et cetera, et cetera. So it's definitely case by case, but there are some commonalities amongst those types of severance packages. But understanding what does that stock option agreement say, or all those inner workings, because it's definitely different by company, but really getting a good sense of what are all your options and knocking on the door and understanding, hey, what are all these options? Can you get me these materials, so you can really get through a fine-tooth comb of all of your various options.
Yeah, and I would add, because that really brought up a good point. Anytime you're being separated from a company, any company with any sort of HR or legal function is going to want you to sign a release of claims,
Mm-hmm.
which is in that severance package. That's what they're asking you to sign. And number one, don't sign that until you just had time to really review it. If there's enough on the table, you might want to hire an attorney, like Justin said. I would say, our experience is often deferred compensation, stock vesting agreements, things like that tend to be at least somewhat negotiable. There's not always a big check necessarily a company's going to write beyond what the headline severance package is. But sometimes there's a little bit of like, okay, well, if you don't compete, we'll leave the vesting schedule in place, or, different things like that. So it's worth giving yourself a minute before you sign away that right, and maybe even consulting some friends, people that know what's common in the industry, and maybe an employment attorney. They'll certainly be busy, but they will also be in the know about what is and isn't negotiable. So yeah, that's a really good one, is just know that as much as the company will probably put pressure and just say, hey, this is the package, you got to sign that to get your check, and you're going to want that check. They also really want you to sign it. So there's a little bit of leverage. You don't want to overplay that, and I don't want to just generalize it, but there's a little bit of leverage until you sign that to make sure that you're getting your interests served as much as possible. And so that's a great point, Justin.
Yeah, and that brings up for me too. There was a client that used to work for Zoom that unfortunately was laid off, and there was some RSUs that weren't vested yet, but there was a negotiation where there was another tranche that was able to be vested. So that's more compensation to help, lengthen that bridge to help them during that transition phase.
Yeah.
I've
I
got
wanted to add one more thing. Maybe Craig was about to add something similar. I know he will riff on it. I want to come back to, because I think we're really careful not to be salesy, but you can't really say enough that like it can be isolating. We do love this work. We are happy to do this work. It does not cost anything. We do not give advice that is only Painted Porch can execute this with you. It is open source. We're really here to help. And you're not bothering us. You're not wasting our time. A lot of that can feel that way, especially when you're feeling a little down about this. Some people will immediately feel like, ooh, I'm ready to launch. Like, let's make it harder to launch. But some people will be like, man, I'm worried. And laying that worry on your friends and family can start to feel not good. And we fully expect it, and we're here to be partners in it. And I just wanted to echo we love it. We want to do it. It doesn't cost anything, and we're not going to sell you anything, and we're here to help. And you can take all of our help and execute it on your own, execute it with anyone you want. We just want to be a resource and be impactful.
being a resource for people and being a sounding board came up a couple times, and I just wanted to kind of dovetail that with, my partner is navigating a transition, and I do think I know a little bit about our financial situation, and I can try to help her feel more confident, but somehow, like, no matter what I throw at her, it falls a little short. And it's like, hey, you know what? Maybe I could just connect you with some of my coworkers, and then you feel way more confident in the message they're giving you, even if it's the exact same message. She doesn't necessarily expect me to be the financial guy, but you could have someone else in your corner who can cover those bases and actually be a lot more objective than I can be, right? Because as hard as I try to be objective, I'm still very much invested in this whole situation. So yeah, just the usefulness of a sounding board. I've certainly seen it in our work with clients, and I'm trying to do it in my own relationship. But yeah, it could help to bring in some more voices and opinions. I could see that.
Especially in a time of stress, Craig. That's so well said, because that's always the case in your close relationships, but in your partnership. But it's not yours, but all of ours. But even more so when it's stressful, and money is one of those top 3 issues that is really charged for a lot of people.